We're tasked with making sure that the county, the cities, 34 cities in Miami-Dade County are prepared for any kind of disaster. All we have to do is take a look at the fact that we have a heat officer, an entire department dedicated to resiliency. We want to make sure that we recover from any disaster, but we want to make sure that we're resilient, that we come out of a disaster better than we were before.
Miami has one of the most sophisticated emergency management programs in the country. We at the Beacon Council think about resilience and sustainability as one of the biggest existential challenges of our times, but also one of the biggest economic opportunities. When we meet with businesses, they're often asking, can we deal with the disasters that have come and the disasters that are to come? But they might not know how seriously we take disaster preparation and management compared to other places. We're pleased to have Pete Gomez with us today. Pete, can you explain what the Office of Emergency Management does and why citizens should know about it?
Well, thank you for the invite. Absolutely. We're tasked with making sure that the county, the cities, the 34 cities in Miami-Dade County are prepared for any kind of disaster. Obviously, we think of hurricanes, we think of tornadoes, but we're technically responsible for 41 risks and threats that the county might endure. It is our task and our job to make sure that we get messaging out to the community, that we train our first responders, that we do training within the community, and make sure that we can respond to the challenges of any one of those 41 threats and risks, and also help recover. You were very succinct in saying that resiliency is a big component of what we do. And yes, we want to make sure that we recover from any disaster, but we want to make sure that we're resilient, that we come out of a disaster better than we were before.
What are some of the types of disasters that you guys confront on a regular basis?
Lately, it's been heat, right? We collaborate with the National Weather Service where we're doing a pilot program, and they have lowered the indicators for heat advisories. We put out notifications when we reach those thresholds so that we make sure that our homeless population and our workers that are working outside get plenty of notification, and they keep hydrated, to take the precautionary measures to protect themselves from the heat. But we know that we live in Hurricane Alley, so we're always preparing for hurricanes. We're always preparing for floods. You've seen lately, within the last few years, that a typical rain event is no longer typical. They're calling them rain bombs, right? They're almost akin to a tropical storm or a very low level hurricane because they bring so much rain and they cause so much disruption to the community. So we're always preparing for those kind of things. But like I mentioned before, we prepare for 41 of these threats and risks, and they come in the form of cybersecurity attacks. We also prepare for nuclear events at Turkey Point. We're preparing for radiological events, improvised explosive devices, active shooters. So we run the gamut of the different type of disasters in preparation and response and mitigation and recovery from those events.
Pete, could you walk us through how you respond to one of those events in real time?
Let's take a hurricane, for example. We'll be monitoring those events as they're developing. As we start to gather that this is going to be heading our way, we'll send out notifications to the department directors. We have 28 departments in Miami-Dade County, but we also send out notification to the municipalities that, hey, you might want to start preparing for this event, and you might want to start taking action. So some of those actions are making sure that the water and sewer department is ready in case we get hit, that transportation and public works is out there sweeping the streets, making sure that all of our storm water systems are clear. Our RER department is going to make sure that we drop canal levels so that if we do get a lot of rain, we can try to minimize the impact that this large amount of rain is going to have on the county. And we also collaborate with the Army Corps of Engineers that manages, and the South Florida Water Management District that manage the primary canals of Miami-Dade County. And they also have pumps that can move water. For example, we can take water from the eastern part of the county and take it to some reservoirs in the western part of the county so that we can minimize the impact that that flooding is going to have on some of these vulnerable cities on the eastern parts of the county. So those are some of the measures that we take. And again, we want to get the messaging out to the community, right? And let them know that, hey, it's time for you to get prepared too.
As you may know, we were designated as a climate-ready technology hub, and we recently got $19.5 million in funding, our region did, to support this work. And in our work of economic development, recruiting companies and bringing people here, oftentimes we'll hear, yeah, Miami's got a great economy, but it won't be around for the long term, or, the talent issues or the climate issues are overwhelming. As I think about it, my response is normally, yeah, we've got those challenges, but everywhere around the country, around the world now is facing climate issues at a higher rate. But that we're cognizant and actively, aggressively addressing them, that we don't have our heads buried in the sand. I tell people that we're best in class in the country. Can you talk about how we stack up in terms of our preparedness vis-a-vis other communities around the country?
Absolutely. I mean, all we have to do is take a look at the fact that we have a heat officer, right? The mayor created a chief heat officer so we can tackle those issues, right? In the different disparate communities, and how can we get these heat islands addressed by planting more trees and getting air conditioning out to the needy communities. That's just one example of how resilient we are as a community. But we also have an entire department dedicated to resiliency with a chief resiliency officer, right? We have a bay officer, and they're doing whatever they can, whatever is possible, to make sure that Miami-Dade County is taking the steps needed to adapt to the climate change, to adapt to rising sea levels, to adapt to flooding, and making sure that we stay ahead of the curve and we are resilient when we come out of those type of events.
How should businesses be interacting with you and the county to make sure that they're best prepared and can be a part of the process as we confront these disasters?
Well, that's an excellent question. We have part of our recovery. We deal with the business community to make sure that we help them recover. We understand the business aspects of it all and making sure that we get the community back to an economic resilient state. And we also can assist them with continuity of operations planning, where we have templates, and we would be happy to share them with them and guide them through creating these templates so that they can recover and be better prepared for any type of event that might afflict those type of businesses.
I want to change directions for a moment. So you spent decades in public service as a fireman, a police officer, and now in emergency management. I want to drill down into a couple of incidents just to get more illustrative of kind of what the work looks like. It's hard to believe that, COVID, we've been out of it for a couple of years now, and it's like many folks forgot about it, but it was really, super impactful in terms of how we as a community navigated it. Can you talk about the massive COVID-19 testing site at FIU that you were able to manage? What were some of the challenges and lessons learned from that experience?
Well, it was only supposed to be like a 3 or 4 week commitment. We ended up committing, I believe it ended up being 60 weeks, like a year and a little bit more was our commitment. Managing that entire site and getting originally all the doctors and all the nurses to speak the same language and make sure that we were all doing the job that needed to be done is unique, because they're some of the brightest minds that we have, and they all have different ways of doing it. It was just so challenging physically for those nurses and doctors, because they were wearing PPE and we were in the middle of a parking lot, and the temperatures were in the 80s and 90s. So to make sure that we were operating in a safe environment, getting them the relief they needed, getting them cooled down and feeding them, it was quite an undertaking.
You talked a little bit about that work and that being at FIU. As you know, we have something here called the Academic Leaders Council that's comprised of the presidents of all the universities, and we work on a variety of different things, but talent being one of the most important ones. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what you've been doing to create the talent infrastructure needed in terms of people in the disaster management area and the launch of the bachelor's program in disaster management?
That's a great question. Well, I was very proud to run that program at FIU, and we were basically recruiting all the time, right? Getting our local first responders to get education, take advantage of the reimbursements from the different municipalities that give education. As we kept building, word got out, and what we call regular students started becoming very interested in the program. And to me, it was a great win because the field of emergency management is growing by leaps and bounds, and we've been able to provide a lot of that leadership here in Florida, especially in South Florida. But now we see our students going into different areas of emergency management, like the cruise industry, the airlines, private industry, different government agencies that have emergency management programs. I take a lot of pride and I take a lot of great happiness knowing that we're able to provide those kind of services to our community.
What types of things would a student that's studying disaster management actually learn?
They learn about responding to a disaster. FIU does their capstone is a field training program where we put them in a scenario, try to mimic a real world event as much as possible, and it's like a 3 day experience out in the North Campus of FIU where they actually sleep over, they eat MREs. We put them in as hostile a condition as we can, uh, simulated, obviously, where we put them in conditions like they would experience in the real world, and we get them involved in making those hard decisions, right? Those life-saving type of decisions, and participating in the national incident management system hierarchy, so they understand who they report to, who they do not report to, what actions to take, what actions not to take, and also uh, the mental stress that's put on these responders when they go to real world events.
How should we be thinking about emergency management, disaster preparedness as an economic opportunity?
Well, I think from a business perspective, it's important for those businesses that are coming to Miami-Dade County to understand how proactive we are in preparing and making sure that when they move here, their families are going to be taken care of, right? That we're going to do everything possible to prepare them and have the county ready in case of one of these disasters. But we're also going to work with you if you need assistance in, creating a continuity of operations plan and helping you, understand what your threats and your risks are if you're moving into Dade County, and the different mitigation actions that you can take to prepare your business to thrive and have success here in Miami-Dade County.
At Opportunity Miami, we're envisioning the Miami of 2040. We're thinking about things such as how much talent that we need by 2040. We're thinking, how do we create the venues and the paths so that everyone who wants to participate as an entrepreneur has opportunities to launch companies that will be successful. And we ultimately, of course, want to be at the forefront of being a resilient and sustainable community. How do you envision the Miami of 2040?
Well, I envision it with an infrastructure that's going to be resilient to the different challenges that we face, right? We understand that the stormwater system is in need of an upgrade, and the mayor and this administration and this group of commissioners have made investments in the millions and billions of dollars into making sure that our infrastructure is prepared, right? But we also have to work with developers and making sure that we develop in a way that's sustainable, that is keeping in mind that we do have these climate changes and we have these impacts to the communities. We've seen it. Some governments have taken proactive measures in making sure that they have the infrastructure in place, like raising streets and making sure that their stormwater systems are prepared. And I think as a community, we need to continue with that, right? Now, it doesn't just fall on government, but we need the private sector to help us out in those areas also.
One last question. If one wants to find out more about your office and the work that's provided, where can they find that information?
Yeah, at miamidade.gov/emergency management, or they want to come take a tour of the facility, we'd be happy to show them around. And we'll come out to community groups. Anybody wants to do any kind of planning and training exercises, we'd be happy to come out there and conduct them for whatever community is in need of that.
Pete, we really appreciate you spending the time with us, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thanks for the great work you do for the residents of Miami-Dade County.
And thank you for all the work you're doing. I don't know if people, the community understands all the great work that the Beacon Council does, but I sure as heck appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.